Commander Zethkar stood on the observation deck of Station Alpha 9, his scaled hands gripping the metal railing. His yellow eyes watched the stars through the thick glass windows. For 20 years he had been watching the same empty space, the same dead zone where the humans lived. The Terran quarantine zone was a dark patch of space. No ships went in. No ships came out. The Galactic Council had made sure of that 200 years ago. They had built a ring of monitoring stations around human space. Station Alpha 9 was just one of many watching posts. Zethkar's tail swished nervously behind him. Something felt wrong today. The stars looked the same. The sensors showed the same readings. But deep in his reptilian brain, an old warning screamed danger. "Commander." The voice belonged to Tech Specialist Rinth, a small blue creature with 6 arms. She ran across the control room, her feet making quick clicking sounds on the metal floor. "You need to see this." Zethkar walked to the main control panel. The screen showed numbers and graphs that made no sense. Energy readings that shouldn't exist. Space itself seemed to be bending in ways that broke all known laws of physics. "What am I looking at?" Zethkar asked. "Something big is coming out of human space," Rinth said. Her voice shook with fear. "But the readings are impossible. The energy signature shows a ship that's bigger than a moon but somehow weighs nothing. It's moving faster than light but also standing still." Zethkar felt his blood run cold. He had heard stories about humans from the old records. The Galactic Council had quarantined them not because they were evil or warlike. They had locked them away because humans were unpredictable. They asked questions that no one else asked. They tried things that no one else would try. "Show me the visual," Zethkar ordered. The main screen changed. Instead of numbers, it showed a view of space. At first, Zethkar saw nothing but stars. Then he saw it. A shadow that shouldn't exist. A shape that hurt to look at directly. It was like trying to see something that was there and not there at the same time. "By the Ancient Ones," whispered Dr. Kell, the station's science officer. She was a tall, thin creature with purple skin and no hair. "That's not a ship. That's something else entirely." The thing on the screen moved in ways that made Zethkar's head hurt. It seemed to slide between dimensions. One moment it looked solid and real. The next moment it looked like a ghost made of light and shadow. "Computer, identify the object," Zethkar commanded. Unable to classify, the computer replied in its calm voice. "Object does not match any known ship design. Energy patterns are inconsistent with current physics models. Designation, unknown anomaly." "Unknown anomaly," Rinth repeated. "That's not very helpful." Zethkar thought about the old stories. Before the quarantine, humans had been part of the Galactic Council. They had been new members, fresh from their home planet. Most species took centuries to understand faster-than-light travel. Humans had figured it out in 50 years. But that wasn't what scared the other species. What scared them was how humans thought. Most aliens followed rules. They accepted that some things were impossible. Humans didn't. If something was impossible, humans wanted to know why. If they couldn't go somewhere, they asked who said so. The Council had tried to teach humans patience. They tried to teach them to follow the old ways. But humans kept asking uncomfortable questions. They wanted to know why faster-than-light travel worked the way it did. They wanted to explore places that were marked as forbidden. They wanted to experiment with things that were considered too dangerous. The final decision came when a human scientist asked a simple question: what if consciousness affects reality? The question had terrified every advanced species in the galaxy. Some doors were meant to stay closed. Some questions were not meant to be asked. "Commander," Dr. Kell said, "the readings are getting stronger. Whatever that thing is, it's affecting space around us. Our sensors are starting to malfunction." Zethkar looked at the screen again. The shadow ship was closer now, close enough that he could see it wasn't entirely there. Parts of it flickered in and out of existence. It looked like someone had tried to build a warship out of dreams and nightmares. "Send a message to command," Zethkar ordered. "Tell them we have a Code Black situation. The quarantine has been breached." Code Black was the highest level of alert. It meant something so dangerous had happened that entire star systems might need to be evacuated. Zethkar had never sent a Code Black message before. He hoped he would never need to send another one. "Commander," Rinth said, her voice barely a whisper, "the computer is trying to give the object a name. It keeps changing, but the latest designation is Ghost 7. Ghost 7. The name fit. The thing on the screen looked like the ghost of a ship that had died in some terrible way. But ghosts weren't supposed to be real. Dead ships weren't supposed to move through space. Sir? Dr. Kell called out. I'm detecting multiple energy signatures now. This isn't just one ship. There are others. Or maybe it's the same ship in different places at the same time. Zethkar felt his world spinning. Ships couldn't be in two places at once. That was basic physics. Matter had to exist in one location at one time. But the sensors didn't lie. They showed the same impossible ship in 3 different locations. How long has the quarantine held? Dr. Kell asked. 200 years, Zethkar replied. Not a single ship has crossed the boundary in 200 years. Then where did they get the technology to build something like this? That was the question that scared Zethkar the most. Humans had been locked away with primitive technology. They shouldn't have been able to build anything more advanced than basic spaceships. Yet here was something that broke every known rule of science. The screen flickered. For a moment, Zethkar could see through the shadow ship. Inside, he saw corridors filled with soft light. He saw humans walking around as if nothing strange was happening. They looked normal. They looked like any other species going about their daily lives. But their ship existed in places where ships couldn't exist. It moved in ways that should have torn it apart. And somehow the humans inside seemed perfectly fine with defying the laws of reality. Get me everything we have on human technology, Zethkar ordered. I want to know what they were working on before the quarantine. Yes, sir, Dr. Kell replied. But Commander, there's something else. The ship is heading toward the edge of our sensor range. If it keeps moving, we'll lose track of it. Zethkar watched the impossible ship slide through space like a knife through water. Soon it would be gone, but he knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness of quarantined space, humanity had been busy. They had been asking their dangerous questions and finding answers that no one else wanted to know. The ghost ship faded from the sensors, but its message was clear. The humans were back. And they had learned to do things that shouldn't be possible. Zethkar wondered what other impossible ships were hiding in human space. He wondered what other questions humans had asked while the galaxy looked away. Most of all, he wondered if the quarantine had been meant to protect the galaxy from humans, or to protect humans from what they might become. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within hours of Commander Zethkar's code black message, every major civilization knew about the impossible human ship. The reaction was not what anyone expected. On the crystal world of Axios Prime, Ambassador Telshara stood in the Great Hall of Memories. The walls around her were made of living crystal that stored the thoughts and experiences of her people. Today those crystals hummed with fear. Show me the human records, she commanded. The crystals responded, filling the air with images from 200 years ago. She watched humans working in laboratories, building machines, asking questions that made her crystalline body shiver. One image stood out. A human woman with dark hair and kind eyes writing equations on a board. Dr. Sarah Chen, Telshara whispered, reading the name from the old records. Theoretical physicist. Last known project, consciousness-driven propulsion. The crystal memories showed more. Dr. Chen had believed that thinking beings could affect reality in ways no one understood. She had wanted to build ships that responded to the crew's thoughts and feelings. The project had been stopped when the quarantine began. Telshara touched the crystal wall, absorbing the stored knowledge. The memories showed fear from every alien species, not fear of human weapons or human violence, fear of human curiosity. Across the galaxy and the floating cities of the ethereal collective, the energy beings gathered in their councils of light. They had no solid bodies, existing as pure thought and energy. They were the oldest species in the galaxy, and they remembered things others had forgotten. Elder Voss's Theron spoke in waves of colored light. The readings matched something from the deep archives. From the spaces between spaces. The other ethereals pulsed with concern. The spaces between spaces were places where reality became thin, where the normal rules didn't work. Most species avoided these areas. They were dangerous and unpredictable. How can solid beings access the between spaces? Asked Elder Nimthara. Only we can exist there, and only briefly. The humans have found a way, Voss Theron replied. They have learned to take their consciousness with them into places where only thought can go. Meanwhile, on the machine world of Terminus 7, the ancient Keeper-class AIs processed the new information. These artificial minds had been built millions of years ago by a species that no longer existed. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, collecting data on everything. Keeper Primary 9 accessed its deepest memory banks. Files marked as theoretical human projects. Classification extremely dangerous filled its consciousness. Most of the files had been sealed by order of the Galactic Council. One file stood out. Project Persistence. Test Vehicle for Consciousness Reality Interface. The file showed blueprints for a ship unlike any other. Instead of normal engines, it had chambers filled with complex machinery, designed to connect human minds directly to the ship's systems. The theory was simple and terrifying. Human consciousness would power the ship by refusing to accept the limits of physics. Keeper Primary 9 sent the information to every major government in the galaxy. Within minutes, evacuation orders went out to 17 star systems, not to prepare for war, but to prepare for the unknown. On the war world of Brutakar, General Thosagran read the reports with his 4 eyes. His species, the Krongar, were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They feared nothing, but as he read about the human ship, his massive hands shook. A ship that exists in multiple places at once, he growled to his aide. Weapons that can strike through dimensions. Crews that have been lost in space for decades but don't age. Shall we prepare the war fleets? His aide asked. General Thosagran was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. You can't fight something that doesn't follow the rules of war. How do you shoot at a ship that's only half there? How do you plan a battle against an enemy that can be in 3 places at the same time? The news reached the inner worlds, where the oldest and most powerful civilizations lived. In the council chambers on Nexus Station, emergency meetings began. Ambassadors from dozens of species gathered to discuss the human situation. The quarantine was supposed to contain them, said Ambassador Zurthak of the Hegemony. His insect-like features clicked with anger. You promised us they would calm down given enough time. We gave them 200 years, replied Counselor Vexitara of the High Reaches. Most species use that time to become more civilized. Humans used it to break reality. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to strengthen the quarantine. Others wanted to negotiate. A few suggested something that no one wanted to say out loud. Complete evacuation of the surrounding sectors. Back at Dr. Chen's old laboratory, now preserved as a historical site on a neutral world, researchers studied her final notes. The equations covered every surface, written in the careful handwriting of a scientist who knew she was running out of time. Consciousness creates reality, one note read. What we believe becomes what is. What we refuse to accept ceases to limit us. Another note was more disturbing. Human emotional states affect quantum fields. Strong emotions like determination, hope, and refusal to surrender can literally change the laws of physics in small areas. The researchers found video logs from Dr. Chen's final experiments. On the screen she looked tired but excited. If this works, she said to the camera, humans will never be trapped by what others say is impossible. We'll go anywhere, do anything, become anything we have the will to become. The video cut to static. The next entry was the emergency alert about the quarantine beginning. Across the galaxy, sensor stations reported new contacts. More impossible ships were appearing at the edge of human space. Each one was different, but all of them shared the same reality-bending properties. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions. Ships that moved by willing themselves to be somewhere else. Ships that were powered by human stubbornness. The worst part wasn't the ships themselves. The worst part was that they were clearly trying to go home. Long-range sensors showed them moving slowly, carefully, like lost children finding their way back to their family. They weren't invading. They weren't attacking. They were just trying to return to Earth after being lost for decades. But their very existence changed everything. Every time one of the impossible ships appeared, space around it behaved strangely. Gravity fluctuated, light bent in wrong directions. Other ships in the area reported their instruments showing readings that made no sense. On the trade world of Merchant's Haven, ships began avoiding human space entirely. Even being near the quarantine zone was considered dangerous. Captains reported nightmares when they got too close, dreams of being lost in endless dark spaces where time moved differently. In the research stations, scientists tried to understand what they were seeing. The energy signatures didn't match any known technology. The materials the ships were made from seemed normal, but they behaved in impossible ways. Dr. Veltan, the galaxy's leading expert on impossible physics, stared at the data for hours. Finally, she came to a conclusion that terrified her. They're not using technology, she told her research team. They're using will. Pure human determination is somehow overriding the basic laws of reality. The question everyone was asking was the same. If humans could do this after being isolated for 200 years, what else had they learned? What other impossible things had they made real through sheer refusal to accept limits? And most importantly, how many more ghost ships were coming home? Ambassador Telshara stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel, Harmony's Voice. Her crystal body reflected the light from the main viewing screen, casting rainbow patterns across the walls. She had volunteered for this mission, though many called it suicide. Contact the human vessel, she ordered Captain Morthek, a careful and experienced spacer from the Volan Republic. Are you sure, Ambassador? Captain Morthek asked. His blue skin had gone pale with worry. We don't know what will happen when we try to communicate with something that shouldn't exist. The Galactic Council needs answers, Telshara replied. And I need to know if humans are still human. The impossible ship hung in space before them. Up close it looked even stranger. Parts of it seemed solid and real. Other parts flickered like a mirage. The hull appeared to be made of normal metal, but sensors showed it extending into dimensions that shouldn't exist. Broadcasting on all frequencies, the communications officer announced. All human languages plus standard galactic common. For long minutes nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered and a face appeared. A human face. Captain Elena Vasquez looked exactly like the humans from the old records. Dark hair, brown eyes, and skin the color of light sand. She wore a uniform that seemed normal, except for the way it sometimes became transparent, as if she was only partially there. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the HMCS Persistence, she said. Her voice sounded tired, like someone who had been traveling for a very long time. I wasn't expecting to see other ships out here. Telshara stepped forward. This is Ambassador Telshara of the Galactic Council. Captain Vasquez, our records show your ship was lost 150 years ago. Captain Vasquez smiled, but it was a sad smile. Time works differently where we've been, Ambassador. From our perspective, we've been traveling for over 300 years. We've been trying to find our way home. Where have you been? Telshara asked. Thought space, Captain Vasquez replied. Dr. Chen's theories were right. Human consciousness can affect reality, but only in places where reality is thin. We accidentally broke through into a dimension where thoughts become real. The bridge crew of the Harmony's Voice looked at each other with growing fear. A dimension where thoughts became real sounded like the most dangerous place in the universe. Can you explain how your ship works? Telshara asked. Captain Vasquez nodded. The Persistence isn't just a ship anymore. It's connected to the minds and hearts of everyone on board. When we need to go somewhere, we think ourselves there. When we need the ship to be stronger, we believe it into being stronger. She paused, looking directly at Telshara through the screen. Your people are afraid of us, aren't they? Telshara had been trained as a diplomat. She knew how to avoid difficult questions, but something about Captain Vasquez made her want to tell the truth. Yes, Telshara said. The whole galaxy is afraid. Your ship violates every known law of physics. You exist in multiple places at the same time. You move through solid matter. Your mere presence affects space around you. Captain Vasquez laughed, but there was no joy in it. We never meant to scare anyone. We just wanted to explore. When the quarantine began, Dr. Chen was working on a new kind of space travel. She thought that human determination could power starships. Determination? Captain Morthek asked from behind Telshara. Human emotions are stronger than other species realize, Captain Vasquez explained. When we really want something, when we refuse to give up, it changes things around us. Dr. Chen built the Persistence to use that power. The captain gestured to something off-screen. Would you like to see how it works? Before anyone could answer, the space around both ships began to change. Reality became soft, like clay being shaped by invisible hands. The Harmony's Voice didn't move, but suddenly it was in a different place. Stars had shifted. The nearby planet was gone, replaced by a nebula that glowed with impossible colors. By the ancients, Captain Morthek whispered, we just traveled 50 light-years in an instant. The Persistence doesn't move through space, Captain Vasquez explained. It moves space around itself. We think about where we want to be, and reality adjusts to make it true. Telshara felt her crystalline body vibrating with fear. How many humans can do this? Just my crew, as far as I know, Captain Vasquez said. But we've been in thought space for a long time. We've learned things, seen things. There are other human ships lost in the same dimension. Some have been there even longer than us. The screen flickered, and Telshara could see the bridge of the Persistence. It looked like a normal ship's bridge except for the crew. They moved in ways that seemed perfectly normal until Telshara looked closely. Some of them were slightly transparent. Others seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. What happened to your crew? Telshara asked. We've been changed by our experiences, Captain Vasquez replied. Living in thought space affects you. We're still human, but we're also something more. We can feel the shape of reality around us. We know when space is about to bend or time is about to slow down. A younger human appeared on the screen beside Captain Vasquez. Captain, we're detecting more council ships approaching. Should we leave? No, Lieutenant, Captain Vasquez said. We're tired of running. We want to go home. Telshara felt a chill run through her crystal body. Home, you mean Earth? Earth, Mars, Luna Station, all of it, Captain Vasquez confirmed. We've been lost for so long. We just want to see our families again, even if they're long dead. The quarantine, Telshara began. The quarantine was a mistake. Captain Vasquez interrupted. You locked us away because you were afraid of what we might become. But isolation just made us more creative, more determined, more human. The lieutenant spoke again. Captain, long-range sensors show 17 more of our ships heading toward the Sol system. They've all been lost in thought space, and they're all trying to come home. Telshara's worst fears were coming true. Not one impossible ship, but 18 of them, all heading toward Earth, all powered by human emotions and human refusal to accept limits. Captain Vasquez, Telshara said carefully. What do you want? We want to see our home, Captain Vasquez replied. We want to share what we've learned, and we want the quarantine to end. What if the council refuses? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Ambassador, we've spent 3 centuries learning how to make impossible things possible. We've discovered that reality is much more flexible than anyone thought. If we really wanted to, we could make the quarantine meaningless. Are you threatening us? No, Captain Vasquez said. I'm explaining. We don't want to fight. We just want to come home. But if someone tries to stop us, they'll discover that it's very hard to fight people who can change the rules of physics by believing strongly enough. Telshara looked at the impossible ship on her screen. She thought about the reports from across the galaxy. Entire star systems evacuating. Ancient AIs refusing to engage with human technology. War fleets that couldn't figure out how to fight an enemy that existed in multiple dimensions. I'll carry your message to the council, Telshara said. Thank you, Captain Vasquez replied. Tell them we're coming home. Not to conquer, not to rule, just to be with our own kind again. Tell them that humanity never stopped being human. We just learned how to be more than we were. The transmission ended. The Persistence faded from normal space, existing only as a shadow that hurt to look at directly. Telshara stood on her bridge, surrounded by her terrified crew, and wondered if the galaxy was ready for humans who could make the impossible real, simply by refusing to believe it was impossible. The Great Council chamber on Nexus Station had never seen such chaos. Representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy filled the vast circular room, their voices creating a symphony of fear and confusion. Ambassador Telshara stood at the center podium, her crystalline body catching the light as she prepared to deliver her report. The human captain spoke the truth, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The quarantine has failed not because it was broken from the outside, but because humans have learned to exist outside the normal rules of space and time. Counselor Vexterra of the High Reaches, a tall being with flowing silver hair and pale skin, stood up. Explain what you mean by outside normal rules, Ambassador. Telshara activated the holographic display. Images of the Persistence appeared in the air above the chamber. The assembled aliens watched in horror as the ship seemed to exist in several places at once, its hull flickering between solid matter and pure energy. The human ship operates on what they call thought space technology, Telshara explained. Their consciousness directly affects reality around them. They move not by traveling through space, but by convincing space to move around them. General Thosgran of the Krongar stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the nearest representatives. This is impossible. Matter cannot be in two places at once. Ships cannot phase through solid objects. These readings must be wrong. I experienced it myself, Telshara replied calmly. The human captain moved our ships 50 light-years in an instant, without any sensation of movement. She didn't use engines or energy fields. She simply decided we should be somewhere else, and we were. Murmurs of fear rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Zerthak of the Hegemony clicked his mandibles nervously. How many of these ships are there? At least 18 confirmed, Telshara said. All heading toward Earth. All crewed by humans who have been lost in what they call thought space for decades or centuries. Elder Voss Theron of the Ethereal Collective pulsed with worried light. We have reviewed our deepest archives. What the humans have discovered should be impossible for beings with physical bodies. Only pure consciousness should be able to access the spaces between spaces. Yet they have done it, Telshara said. And more than that, they have learned to take their physical forms with them. The chamber fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Finally, Dr. Zephyr of the Academic Consortium spoke up. She was a small, elderly being with large eyes and delicate features. Ambassador, you said the human captain claimed their technology was based on emotion. Can you explain this? Telshara nodded. According to Captain Vasquez, human emotional states can affect quantum fields. Strong feelings like determination, hope, and refusal to accept failure can literally change the laws of physics in small areas around them. That's absurd, declared Science Minister Kothvar of the Technical Alliance. Emotions are biochemical reactions. They cannot affect fundamental forces. Tell that to the humans, Telshara replied. Their ships exist because they believe strongly enough that impossible things should be possible. She paused, looking around the chamber. There's something else. Captain Vasquez said that isolation has made humans more creative, not less. The quarantine gave them time to explore ideas that we considered too dangerous. Counselor Vexitera leaned forward in her chair. What ideas? Project files recovered from human space before the quarantine show experimental research into consciousness-reality interfaces, Telshara explained. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead scientist, believed that sapient minds could directly influence the universe around them. The holographic display changed, showing images from the old archives. Dr. Chen appeared as she had looked 200 years ago, young and enthusiastic, writing equations that made several aliens in the chamber step backward. Dr. Chen theorized that reality is more flexible than we assumed. Telshara continued. She believed that strong enough conviction could override physical laws, at least in limited areas. General Thosagran slammed his fist on his chair's armrest. This is why we quarantined them in the first place. Humans ask questions that shouldn't be asked and seek answers that shouldn't be found. And now they have found those answers, Elder Voss Theron observed. The question is, what do we do about it? Ambassador Morkan of the Peaceful Worlds raised a tentacle. Did the humans make any demands? Any threats? Captain Vasquez said they just want to go home, Telshara replied. They want to see Earth again and share what they've learned. They also want the quarantine to end. Absolutely not, shouted Minister Kothvar. If we let them integrate with galactic civilization, their dangerous ideas will spread. Other species might try to replicate their technology. Can it be replicated? Asked Dr. Zephyr. Telshara was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but Captain Vasquez implied that human consciousness works differently from other species. She suggested that human emotions are somehow stronger or more focused than ours. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some wanted to reinforce the quarantine. Others suggested negotiation. A few extremists even proposed military action, though nobody could explain how to fight ships that existed in multiple dimensions. In the midst of the chaos, Keeper Primary Nine's artificial voice cut through the noise. The ancient AI had been silent until now, observing and processing information. Council members, the AI announced, I have been analyzing human historical patterns. Before the quarantine, humans consistently demonstrated an ability to adapt to any situation and overcome any obstacle. Isolation has not changed this trait. It has concentrated it. What do you mean? Counselor Vexistara asked. Humans have spent 200 years with no external challenges except the limits of physics itself, Keeper Primary 9 explained. They have applied their natural problem-solving abilities to reality itself. They have quite literally solved the problem of being bound by natural laws. The chamber fell silent again, The implications were staggering. Elder Vos Theron pulsed with dim light. If humans can override physics through willpower alone, what stops them from doing anything they want? Nothing, Keeper Primary 9 replied. According to my analysis, the only limitations on human thought space technology are the limitations of human imagination and determination. Ambassador Telshara stepped forward. There's one more thing. Captain Vasquez said there are other human ships still lost in thought space. Ships that have been there even longer than the Persistence. If they find their way home, how many more? General Thossagrand demanded. Unknown, Telshara admitted. But the captain's expression suggested there could be many more. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The weight of this revelation settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Hundreds of ships powered by human stubbornness and human refusal to accept limits. Ships that could ignore walls appear in multiple places at once and move by thinking themselves from one location to another. We have a choice, Telshara said finally. We can try to fight them, though I don't see how we could win against an enemy that can change the rules of combat at will. We can try to maintain the quarantine, though it's clearly failed, or we can try to negotiate with them. What do they want in exchange for staying away? Asked Ambassador Zurthak. They don't want to stay away, Telshara replied. They want to come home. They want to be part of the galaxy again, and honestly, after seeing what they can do, I'm not sure we have the power to stop them. Counselor Vexitara stood up slowly. Then we need to decide quickly. If these human ships are heading toward Earth, they'll reach our outer monitoring stations within days. We need to decide how to respond before they arrive. The debate continued, but Telshara could see the truth in every representative's eyes. The galaxy had tried to contain humanity and failed. Now they had to live with the consequences of forcing the most adaptable species in known space to adapt to isolation. The humans were coming home, and they had learned to make the impossible real. The Sol system looked different than it had 200 years ago. Earth still hung in space like a blue and green jewel, but now it was surrounded by structures that shouldn't exist, space stations that bent light around themselves, orbital platforms that existed in several dimensions at once, ships that looked like they were made of crystallized dreams. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the HMCS New Horizon, watching the approaching Galactic Council fleet through eyes that had seen impossible things become routine. His ship, like all the vessels in humanity's new fleet, existed partially outside normal space. It was there and not there, solid and ethereal, real and imagined all at the same time. Admiral, reported Commander Lisa Park, his communications officer. The Council fleet is requesting permission to approach Earth. Ambassador Telshara is leading the delegation. Grant permission, Admiral Torres replied, and send them coordinates for the orbital conference station. It's time we had a proper conversation. The Council fleet consisted of dozens of ships representing every major civilization in the galaxy. As they approached Earth, their crews stared in wonder and terror at what humanity had built. The defensive platforms around Earth didn't look threatening, but sensors showed they existed in places where matter shouldn't be able to exist. Ambassador Telshara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. How many humans are down there? She asked. Current population is 12 billion, Captain Morthek replied, reading from his instruments. But the energy readings suggest there are consciousness patterns extending far beyond the planet's surface. It's like their minds are connected to something vast. Telshara nodded grimly. 200 years of isolation had allowed humanity to grow and change in ways no one had predicted. Instead of stagnating, they had flourished. The orbital conference station was a marvel of impossible engineering. It looked like a crystal palace floating in space, its walls made of solidified light and crystallized thought. Inside, the main conference room was larger than it appeared from the outside, a trick of dimensional folding that made several alien delegates feel dizzy. Admiral Torres entered the conference room with a small group of humans. They looked normal at first glance, but Telshara noticed they cast shadows in directions where no light sources existed. Their eyes seemed to see things that weren't quite there. Welcome to Earth, Admiral Torres said, his voice warm and genuine. I'm sorry it took us so long to invite you back, but we've been busy. General Thossagran of the Krongar leaned forward in his chair. What have you done to yourselves? Our sensors show energy patterns that don't match any known life form. We've evolved, replied Dr. Sarah Chen. Telshara was shocked to see her. According to the records, Dr. Chen should have been dead for 50 years, but there she was, looking exactly as she had in the archived videos except for her eyes. Her eyes held the depth of someone who had seen the universe from the inside. Dr. Chen, Telshara said carefully, you were reported dead decades ago. I was lost in thought space for a while, Dr. Chen replied with a smile. Time works differently there. A few subjective years for me, several decades for you. Death isn't as permanent as we used to think when consciousness can exist independently of biology. The alien delegates exchanged worried glances. Humans who could cheat death were even more terrifying than humans who could bend physics. Let me explain what happened, Admiral Torres said, activating a holographic display. When the quarantine began, we were cut off from the rest of the galaxy. But we weren't idle. Dr. Chen's work continued, and we made breakthrough after breakthrough. The display showed Earth's development over the past 2 centuries. Underground cities that existed in pocket dimensions. Orbital habitats that were bigger inside than outside. Ships that were built not from metal and circuits, but from human will and determination made solid. We discovered that consciousness isn't just aware of reality, Dr. Chen explained. Consciousness participates in creating reality. The universe is much more collaborative than anyone realized. Elder Vossatheron pulsed with confused light. How is this possible? Even we ethereals who exist as pure energy cannot affect reality so directly. Because you still think of consciousness as separate from the universe, Dr. Chen replied. Humans learned to see consciousness as part of the fundamental structure of reality itself. When we really believe something should be true, when we commit our whole beings to making it real, the universe responds. She gestured to the walls around them. This station exists because we believed it should exist. Our ships work because we refuse to accept that they shouldn't work. Our people live longer because we decided that death was just another problem to solve. Minister Kothvar of the Technical Alliance spoke up. This violates every principle of science. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed by thought alone. You're right, Admiral Torres agreed. They can't be created or destroyed, but they can be convinced to behave differently. Reality is much more flexible than you think, especially when you approach it with the right attitude. What attitude? Asked Dr. Zephyr. Stubborn optimism, Admiral Torres replied with a grin. The absolute refusal to accept that something is impossible just because everyone says it is. Captain Elena Vasquez entered the conference room, her form flickering slightly as she moved between dimensions. Sorry I'm late. The persistence was helping some of our lost ships find their way home. Telshara turned to face her. Captain, how many ships are we talking about? 347 at last count, Captain Vasquez replied casually. All lost in thought space over the past 2 centuries. All finding their way back to Earth. All crewed by humans who have learned to make reality more of a suggestion than a law. The number hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. 347 ships that could ignore physics. 347 crews of humans who had spent decades or centuries learning to bend the universe to their will. What do you want? Counselor Vexistara asked, her voice barely a whisper. The same thing we've always wanted, Admiral Torres replied. To explore, to learn, to meet new people and see new places. The quarantine kept us locked away from the galaxy, so we explored reality itself instead. Dr. Chen stepped forward. We want to share what we've learned. We want to teach other species how to work with reality, instead of being limited by it. We want to help everyone reach their full potential. And if we refuse? General Thosagran asked. Admiral Torres was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. General, we've spent 200 years learning that the word impossible is really just a suggestion. If we wanted to end the quarantine by force, we could make your ships forget how to hold together. We could convince space itself that your weapons don't exist. He paused, looking around the room. But we won't. We're not conquerors. We're explorers. We want friends, not subjects. What about the danger? Ambassador Zerthak asked. If other species learn your techniques, if consciousness-based technology spreads, then the universe becomes a more interesting place, Dr. Chen replied. Every species has its own way of thinking, its own approach to problems. Imagine what we could accomplish together if we all learned to work with reality instead of being trapped by it. Telshara found herself speaking before she realized it. You're asking us to change everything. Every principle of science, every law of physics, every assumption about how the universe works. Yes, Admiral Torres said simply. We're asking you to grow. The conference room fell silent. Outside the transparent walls, Earth continued its ancient rotation, surrounded by impossible structures built from human dreams and human determination. In the distance, more ships were arriving. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions, powered by the absolute conviction that the universe should be a place where anything was possible. Finally, Elder Voss Theron spoke. If we agree to end the quarantine, if we allow humans back into galactic society, what guarantees do we have that you won't use your abilities for conquest? Captain Vasquez laughed. Elder, we've had these abilities for 200 years. If we wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done it already. We chose to use our power to come home instead. Admiral Torres nodded. We're not interested in ruling anyone. We're interested in exploring with everyone. The universe is vast and strange and wonderful. Why would we want to waste time fighting when we could be discovering new impossibilities together? Dr. Chen activated another holographic display. This one showed star charts extending beyond the known galaxy, into regions that had never been explored. There are places out there where reality works completely differently, dimensions where time flows backward, universes where mathematics creates music. We want to explore all of it. She looked around the room, her eyes bright with possibility. And we want to take all of you with us. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but in the end curiosity won over fear. The quarantine was officially ended, and humanity was welcomed back into galactic society. The universe had just become a much more interesting place. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.